Games That Don't Fake Space by Jacob Geller. This channel has been suggested to me in general. I have watched one video of his before. The one video of Jacob Geller that I watched was fucking fantastic. So it was the one about the search for the last secret in Shadow of Colossus. Somebody just requested like a random video of his. I landed on this one, Games That Don't Fake Space, and I am really interested in seeing what this is all about. He makes videos on variety of video game topics, and from what I've seen, like all of them are super interesting. So don't know how this will go over on the channel, but I personally love content like this.
This video is better on Nebula, both because there are no ads and because you can follow it up with an exclusive recording of a live talk I recently gave at my local library. Okay, shh, now the video's starting for real. Sometimes huge feels bigger than infinite. Let me explain. No Man's Sky is more or less infinite. A space game with 18 quintillion planets, a number that, while not technically limitless, approaches the number of planets in our actual universe, a figure so unfathomably large that it shoots right past meaninglessness. I can no more easily conceptualize 1 quintillion planets than 18, or even a billion. It is so big that words fail. But allow me to present a counterexample, a game that has stuck in my brain for years. The racing game Fuel. Developed by Asobo Studios in 2009, Fuel is a fairly middling racing game with mediocre handling and weird opponent AI. And yet, Fuel has a serious claim to fame. The game's map is 14,400 square kilometers, or 5,500 square miles. This is obscene.
Jesus
I've thought about Fuel for more than a decade now, simply because of this staggering number. 120 clicks long, 120 clicks wide, thousands upon thousands of tracks to race upon in the middle. That's 370 times larger than Skyrim, 200 times as large as GTA 5. It is so big that the entirety of a real-scale Mount Rainier sits on the top of the map and hardly even dominates the space. It is as big as Connecticut, or Puerto Rico. And this number still basically rounds down to 0 in comparison to something like No Man's Sky or Elite.
It really reminds me of the first, I think the second Elder Scrolls. What was it? The first one was Arena, and the second one was, I don't remember, but I think the second Elder Scrolls had a map so fucking huge it took you actual weeks of real time just galloping on a horse from one point to the other. But it was mostly, obviously when you have something so huge, it's mostly empty because you don't have like really the leisure to hand decorate those maps. Daggerfall, yeah. There is one technicality that it doesn't count as one huge interconnected map because it's a series of square maps jointed together via loading screen. Morrowind also had that, where if you approach the edge of the current map, you would enter a loading screen to another one. It was basically squares connected to each other. And yeah, Daggerfall was built also like that. It is technically it's one of the biggest maps ever, but it's not seamless. It's not like connected together. It's just series of maps, but it's still fucking impressive. God damn.
Dangerous. But it sure doesn't feel like 0 when you can pick one direction and drive for literally hours. It doesn't feel like 0 when you watch one biome gradually melt into another over the course of miles of road. You might have recognized the name Asobo Studios from another game. They went on to develop Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, a game that literally contains a 1-to-1 scale model of the Earth, one of the most staggering technical achievements I've ever seen. In hindsight, Fuel seems like a test run for this, a huge game created using a mix of procedural generation and satellite imagery that can, somehow, run on console. And while I love Flight Simulator, and have written about it at length, I think this makes Fuel the stranger cultural object. Unlike Flight Simulator, or No Man's Sky, or Elite Dangerous, you don't have access to vehicles that can cross vast distances near instantly. You have a car, a grounded, limited car to cover this landmass, and because your perspective and options are so limited, Fuel still, to me, manages to feel big in a truly radical way. In the decade after,
Fuel is so weird for this. Like, why so much space on a racing game? Like, you know, it's not even like Elder Scrolls Daggerfall that I brought up. There is point to it because it's like a fantasy RPG, right? So it gives to the idea that you're traversing this vast continent with like full of adventures and dungeons and shit. But like in Fuel, it's a racing game. Why do you need a map that big? Maybe it has like great online, because I know the crew also had like a huge map, but it was like primarily a multiplayer experience. So there was an excuse to like drive around with your friends and shit. I've seen a different creator go over the same point. Devmar is making a game called Pentinent, he will probably never finish, but he had a great video called Massive Boss Won't Fit on Screen, and his implementation of such a huge boss is incredible to see when he shows what the intro to the fight is like after his devlog stuff. The point being is that the presentation of the boss is so much more incredible than the otherwise empty infinite world that he might add. Daggerfall also did more to feel like that you were in the world. You would fail the main quest, for instance, if you took more than 30 days to reach the bar, if I recall correctly, because your contact would leave. Oh shit, I didn't know that. That's actually kinda cool. A person just got bored and left while you were making your way to get the info. Damn.
After Fuel's release, 2 other racing games with similar missions came out.
I think he's literally gonna talk about The Crew.
Ubisoft's The Crew and The Crew 2. Unlike Fuel, which covers an undefined portion of post-climate disaster America, The Crew makes its map explicit. It is the whole country, from east coast to west, tip to tail.
Man, I always wanted to play The Crew, but I think there is a whole fucking precedent now not to play it ever, because they took down the servers. So I don't know if it was for the first one or the second one, but there is a precedent to like not play Ubisoft online only titles because they might shut down the fucking server. And what if I like the game, you know? Now I wouldn't even want to take the chance.
Kinda. The maps of the Crew games are large, but not nearly as large as Fuel, let alone the United States. To adjust for this, the America of the Crew looks a little like one of those draw the country from memory maps. You can map the road trip of your dreams in this game, but charting a route from, for instance, LA to San Francisco will reveal that one is about 10 miles away from the other. The graphics and detail are a significant jump from Fuel, but in a way that only highlights the artifice. You can hilariously visit many landmarks in The Crew, like Mount Rushmore, which happens to be in a Denny's parking lot, or Mesa Verde, maybe, or my favorite, Niagara Falls, which has been made so modest you can drive over the top of it. Cities demonstrate the same artifice in a slightly different way. Storefronts.
I mean, that is hilarious and looks like video gamey, but I kinda dig The Crew's aesthetic.
Display what appears
just as a simulator of that trek through America in a fucking car, you know. I'm legit scared of online only games specifically for that exact reason. I want a game I can come back to whenever. Yeah, I think every single online game that you specifically buy, because I don't know, Final Fantasy that has like that is online only, or like MMOs that are online only, everybody kinda assumes at one point they will die, right? That's normal. But every game that has that you buy should have an optional offline mode. I don't care if when you play the crew offline, it's stripped of literally almost all of the features. That should be there so you can play the game and still drive throughout the fucking country when the servers go down, you know? Like recently, that whole discussion was had about Payday because it's online only, and that feels fucking awful because maybe someday the servers go down and now what? I won't be able to play it on my own, even though it's a game that you can perfectly play solo without friends because you have AI helpers. It's so weird, man.
To be the average of all possible commercial writing, like this one that boasts 50% off, buy one, get second one, t-shirts, 4 for $5, 15% off. Or this bookstore with a large banner that simply says store, and smaller text detailing that it is actually a second-hand.
To be fair, I wish stores in real life worked like this. You just see a store books, store clothes. I wish all stores worked like that.
And antiquarian electric, or this gift shop that upon closer inspection is actually a grocery store, or this pizza place that has, quote, all flavors. The crew games, while easy to make fun of, are almost certainly more mechanically satisfying than Fuel. The squashing of America down to a handful of iconic cities and the roads in between is a genuinely interesting idea to explore.
Whoa,
but I still come back to Fuel, because while its cities are even less compelling than the crew and its driving kind of feels like butt, there's this indefinable power to just how big the game is. You can start driving through a dried up Grand Canyon and just keep going and going and going, the cliff walls stretching into the horizon. Fuel refuses to make the landscape small in order to increase density and visual diversity. Simultaneously, it doesn't push its procedural generation so far that it breaks human imagination, creating a quintillion planets consisting of the same basic tropes. It pulls a trick far more stubborn, and yet to me, far more compelling. It refuses to fake the space.
I wonder if he's gonna actually bring up Elder Scrolls in this video, like the older ones, obviously, because he brought up Skyrim as a comparison. I love store. All hail store.
If you are anything like me, you've probably Googled biggest video game maps at some point and run into your own personal conflict.
Oh
what
man.
Counts as some point. And run into your...
I love Metal Gear Solid 5 map, but at the same time I really fucking hate it, because there are parts of that map that are just useless. But that goes for every single like big map. Okay, maybe not Mafia. I think Mafia like is all city and no dead space. Maybe on the outskirts. I don't remember that well. But like I remember, like GTA 5 is a famous example. Like that mountain, like the entire top of the map is, I think, kinda useless. It only exists to make your delivery missions in online a fucking pain in the ass.
Own personal conflict. What counts as big? What's a cheat? What's a technicality?
Love me some
One of
Witcher
the biggest
music.
ever video game maps is the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall,
Hey,
released
there
on
we go.
MS-DOS in 1996. Daggerfall looks like this. It's a world map like this.
Beautiful. He meant to say...
Daggerfall looks like...
He meant to say it looks like a masterpiece. Like a fucking master painter took up his brush and through divine inspiration made the most beautiful painting you will ever lay your eyes upon. This is what Daggerfall looks like. I actually really dig all the RPG aesthetics, so I love it.
It's a world map like this and is reportedly about the size of Great Britain. And I look at that and think, okay, sure, dude. Daggerfall has several large regions, and the landscape within those regions is entirely procedurally generated. The exceptionally patient YouTuber How Big Is the Map has a video walking across Daggerfall's landmass in real time, and the first of 15 videos in the playlist is 7.5 hours of trekking across identical gray mountains. Each generated world of Minecraft has the potential to be many, many times larger than Earth, but Minecraft is, of course, randomly and procedurally generated. The fact that there's
True, like, people don't usually include Minecraft in that discussion, even though it kinda was created just like fucking Daggerfall, so just, you know, generated. MGS5's map got really cool after I modded the game to increase enemy density by a lot and gave them tanks to drive around in. Oh shit! That sounds cool, I need to try that. Nearly had a heart attack in MGS5 when I sprinted right around a massive boulder and ended up in front of a tank's cannon.
No authorship in a Minecraft world or in the middle of the Daggerfall continent lessens their impact. This rationalization of what feels big and what doesn't is made up and inherently imperfect. Fuel uses plenty of procedural generation. No human decided on the elevation of 14,000 kilometers of terrain. But Fuel's proc-gen works in conjunction with satellite data, and the map is ironically small enough that it can still feel huge rather than meaningless. Essentially, what I'm saying here is I'm working more in the realm of what emotionally registers.
But I think it also depends on the game. But yeah, the Daggerfall's huge map doesn't feel that great. It's just a cool claim to fame that they have the biggest map, but yeah, it's mostly just fucking grey rocks.
Big rather than the raw numbers. And while I've talked about map size as a whole thus far, I've actually more often found these moments awe at the sheer size of something hidden in more traditional levels. A single instance of bigness shattering the imposed reality of the rest of the setting. Am I speaking complete gibberish right now? As I'm writing this, I genuinely can't tell. Anyway, a lot of game development is creating the illusion of a holistic space and continuous progression out of several distinct pieces. I remember being mind blown many years ago watching one of these special features on God of War 2, in which they note that if a piece of level isn't visible, it simply doesn't exist. This makes sense for titles with a fixed camera like God of War, but it's not uncommon for any style of game to take what we might consider camera like God of War, but it's not
Man, the original God of War trilogy is kind of funny when you go back to it now.
Any style of game to take what we might consider shortcuts, building environments based on what the player will see rather than real-world architecture. As digital explorers like the YouTube channel Boundary Break often find, even seemingly straightforward environments like the office of the Stanley Parable are not as they seem. They're essentially games' version of matte paintings or false building facades, ways to communicate a grander space while still staying within the constraints of budget and memory. Because games don't have to abide by real-life physics, they can have fun with this as well. The endless staircase in Mario 64 is an iconic example. Near the top of the castle, the player finds these stairs ascending into the dark and runs up them. The music continuously works its way higher and higher, the paintings rush by, and if you're 10-year-old me, you might run up these stairs for minutes before turning around and realizing you haven't moved at all. It's a trick as simple as it is effective. Mario is being invisibly teleported backwards almost continuously, creating an illusion of infinite ascension with only a single flight. It's fun to think that even in the early days of 3D games, developers were already having fun with tricks of perspective and space. But there are counterexamples to this, a bigness that's not simply a mirage of clever programming. One of the best levels in Silent Hill 2, which by default makes it one of the best levels of all time, is the Historical Society. A museum located off the main road. The first few minutes in the Historical Society are almost normal, at least by Silent Hill standards. Photographs cover the walls of the entryway, offering a bit of background on the town, and of course your old pyramid-headed friend. It is punishingly dark, and a sort of foghorn emanates from the walls, but it's not until you walk through this hole smashed in a wall.
Man, every time somebody brings up Silent Hill 2, the original, I'm just thinking about how the remake is. There is no... Like, the developers of the remake have such a fucking mountain to climb, and I don't know if there is equipment in this world that will allow them to take the journey and survive. But I honestly wish them success in their endeavor. But holy shit. Daggerfall also has the coolest way of doing a vampire transformation. You gradually get sicker, watch your stats go down day after day without knowing why, until you eventually die. Then you watch the standard death sequence, but instead of getting the game over, you awaken inside the tomb as a vampire with broken stats. Also, you could argue against your crimes in court and possibly win. You could also get a flying horse. Daggerfall was really cool. Man, I never played... I think I played literally the first sequence of Arena, and that was my brush with the old Elder Scrolls games, that being 1 and 2. But at some point I would like to go back and try to get through the story of both of them. I like how the new God of War games unironically present Kratos as the villain of the second and third. I don't know, man. I don't think they do. I mean, he definitely did some fucked up stuff, but I mean, at the same time, he was going against like fucking Ares and Zeus, and they were such fucking pieces of shit that it offsets anything Kratos has done as kind of righteous, because if they were not brought down, shit would be like unbelievably screwed. So, but I get where that energy is coming from, definitely.
That the Historical Society tips its hand. Beyond the hole are stairs that go down and down and down. It is minutes of walking into the black. The foghorn gets more frequent. James' footfalls repeat endlessly. And then, with no celebration, you're at the bottom. In typical fashion, there's not even a big reveal at the end, just another office room. Mario's run up the stairs is accompanied by what's called a shepherd scale, a sort of musical illusion in which a series of notes can be made to climb infinitely by overlapping them an octave apart. The effect is bizarre, to say the least. Click around on a 10-minute loop of the track and every bit sounds identical, but listen to it continuously and you'll swear the notes are working their way up. But the tone can descend as well. As Gareth Damian Martin notes in their seminal piece, The Basement's Basement, Silent Hill 2's descent functions in much the same way as this scale. If you listen to a descending shepherd tone for any length of time, the feeling of being slowly dragged down, almost compressed, is unmistakable. It's that downward movement, the slow decay of a sound. How far can it continue, you ask yourself? How much deeper? But the tone is steady, its slow descent both rapidly falling and yet going nowhere at all. Following the staircase, James falls.
Man, the music from Silent Hill 2 is so fucking peak. God.
Further into the earth, continuously choosing to jump down pits with nothing but dark at the bottom. Silent Hill relishes in the impossibility. After falling miles into the ground, you eventually emerge on the shores of a lake. The spatial absurdity is the point, rapidly falling, and yet going nowhere at all. But each pit James jumps into is accompanied by a cutscene and a loading screen, two embellishments that, while necessary, remove us just slightly from the environment. In those jumps, a reminder of Silent Hill's gaminess returns, that the environment is constantly being built around us instead of existing all at once. The staircase is different. There is no load, no movie to separate us from it, and as you might have guessed from this video's topic, the stair doesn't fake it. It's all there, every step rendered in real geometry at the same time. I worked with streamer Brosentia to capture this footage, and his other out-of-bounds footage is more what you'd expect. Half-built architecture, streets that end in nothing, 2D planes to portray distance. But the staircase is just there. This thing is ridiculous, he told me. Nothing else is at all close to this. And I can't get the staircase out of my head, perhaps because the out-of-bounds footage is just as nightmarish as the in-game perspective.
Yeah, I was about to say, this looks fucking surreal. God damn.
If there is no illusion, no shepherd scale, James in this moment is walking into the bowels of the earth in as real a way as the game allows. Several iconic game moments center around nothing more than this sort of transitory environment, the liminal space, if you will.
The fucking ladder from Metal Gear Solid 3, classic.
Of an exceptionally long journey up or down a single object. The ladder after the end in Metal Gear Solid 3, the ladder back to Yosefka's clinic in Bloodborne, the climb up the stairs of the Shinra building in Final Fantasy VII, the elevator down into the Siofra River well in Elden Ring. Some of these are all there, as with Silent Hill 2. Some are pieced together from multiple different chunks. All are cool and memorable sequences. But when I think about enormous cool...
That Elden Ring sequence was fucking crazy. That feeling that, oh my god, this open world is so huge. And then you go into this fucking elevator and you realize there is an underground that has huge chunks of the map too. And you just go...
Memorable sequences.
So cool.
When I think about enormous transitory spaces, there's only one that matches the energy of Silent Hill. Years ago, I talked about the indie game Naissance, an impersonal and unsettling trek through an endless, brutalist nowhere-scape. My first encounter with the game was in the magazine Heterotopius, fittingly also penned by Gareth Damian Martin. The game's developer said in that magazine that there are no invisible walls in Naissance, and thus, no security. This speaks to how I first experienced the game. It is a challenging, frustrating experience. But on a recent revisit, I took this no invisible walls statement as more of a challenge. Enabling flying in the console commands certainly breaks the game progression, but it doesn't break the world nearly as much as you might think. It just keeps going. This mechanical chasm in the architecture is modeled well above and below what the player is ever able to normally see. In this endless row of identical blocks, you can fly for what feels like miles.
I have never seen or heard about this game, but this looks cool.
This dark...
Kinda reminds me of my favorite, I think, bit of Nier Automata, called The Copied City. And it's just like completely untextured white buildings that feel so out of place. I wish that place was bigger.
Electrical Canyon has details a player would never find. But like Silent Hill 2, it's the big staircase that takes the cake. Towards the end of the game, you emerge from a dense ventilation network and are met with these white stairs, going up instead of down, but similarly shrouded in dark. So you start going up, and keep going up, or at least that's what you assume, because it's so punishingly dark that you can barely see the step in front of you, and you do this for minutes on end, even longer than the Historical Society, so long it seems they may truly never end, and then you're at the top. Like Silent Hill, the space defies all expectations. After the endless ascension, you emerge not on top of the mechanical expanse, but somehow at the bottom of a desert, your forever climb landing you in a place that feels lower than you started.
That's so cool.
The stairs are nonsense. They're impossible, and yet they are also all really there. Enabling a wireframe outline allows us to see through the dark, but even it can't display the true scale because the stairs simply fade from view. Like Silent Hill 2's Descent, there's nothing lost by going out of bounds here. In fact, the construction is even more impressive, and even more preposterous. I've found this kind of thing more frequently in indie titles. The more big and expensive a game, the more often it needs to be absolutely optimized so it can squeeze every drop of hardware power into its intended visuals. In God of War 2, by making everything you can't see non-existent, everything you can see could receive that little extra oomph. But smaller, independent titles, either because they're not as graphically taxing or because they're not subject to the same terms of optimization, have space for all this extra stuff. Sometimes it feels like they're nothing but extra stuff. Sometimes that's the point. The game Babdi, released for free last year on Steam and itch.io, is a game about the extra stuff. The objectives of Babdi are as straightforward as they could be. Get a ticket for the train, tickets are sold out, so get one from your neighbor, leave on the train. The appeal is instead the setting, this cold concrete city block that is so much larger and more vertical than the stated goals of the game
Typical Polish apartment complex.
require. Babdi, the name of the city as well as the game, is a brutalist playground, a place where every balcony can be clambered over, and if you wander the underground enough, you might find people having a trash-fire jukebox dance party. Or you might not. One of the strangely appealing things about Babdi is that as often as there's something to find, your curiosity can also take you into places that end without fanfare. The massive reservoir the city sits on is completely open, and although its corners hold no secrets, there's nothing to keep you out of it either. Eventually I found a pickaxe that allowed me to scale any wall, and my reward was just that, the intrinsic pleasure of finding that yes, every building has a roof, yes, with enough work, I can stand upon the tallest spire. Because Babdi so effectively communicates that every piece of it is real, every piece is there, I never even paused to wonder if the game would get in my way of exploration. Like its entire rundown vibe, the environment of the game feels more or less lawless, that there will be no artificial impediment to wherever you want to.
This kinda reminds me of a thing I used to do when I was younger. Garry's Mod has a lot of these very impressive big maps, and when I was younger I used to just no-clip my way across like different buildings and stuff in Garry's Mod, just to, you know, just to see what is up there on that roof, even though it was literally nothing most of the time, because why would there be something up there? And yeah, seeing this footage of this game and him like using all these tools to get on those roofs, and there is literally nothing there, you're just kind of standing there, really reminded me of that experience. It's so cool. If you like the aesthetics of those mechanical blocks and the copied city, then the manga Blame sounds right up your alley. It's set in a giant solar system sized derelict structure like that. Heard about Blame before, but never really looked into it. But yeah, that's definitely like my aesthetic, so
go.
Maybe I will give it
It's not massive in the way many game cityscapes are massive. It's 1% of a GTA map. But Babdi feels big, because its utilitarian art style implies that every building is truly there. Nothing is a hollow facade, nothing fancifully painted with the false textures of civilization. Maybe the best way I can put it...
I love that he has this like fucking scooter or whatever that vehicle is, and you can just jump on it.
The objectives of the game aren't indicated by the design of the environment itself. The city doesn't seem built for the player to have an adventure in. It was built, existed, and then sometime later, the player stumbled in. The language I've been using in this video is inherently flawed. I know that. The verbiage of real or fake, illusion or genuine, trick or legitimate isn't suited to video games. A computer is making me think there's a world inside of this flat screen. The whole thing is an unbelievably complicated illusion, a magic trick so impressive we don't even think about it. There is no staircase, there is no Babdi, there is no 14,000 square kilometers of post-apocalyptic wilderness. For the purposes of this video, I've made my scales of realness completely relative. The Historical Society's stairs are real only when compared to Mario 64. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. This is about what feels real, what emotionally registers as big. And in using this language so loosely, I think I've completely shot myself in the foot for the last game I want to talk about. Because the thing about Anor Londo, the shining city atop the world of Dark Souls, is it's all an illusion. In lore, in the game's reality, what we are looking at is fake. The dazzling sunlight vanishes when questioned, the castle's polished halls fall into shadows, and it goes further, because under that illusion is another, kept in a crypt far beneath the throne room. A massive statue blocks the way, only to fade with the sun or in the presence of a special ring. When it disappears, it reveals, what else? A staircase down. But the stairs aren't the notable part here. Beyond the door at the bottom lies Dark Sun Gwendolyn, one of my favorite Souls bosses purely for visual splendor. It is a fight based on illusion. Gwendolyn curses you for entering, and then throws the back of the hallway into the infinite, the statues on the wall repeating endlessly as they vanish into the horizon. The fight is one of the rare instances where Dark Souls transcends into the environmentally surreal, and accordingly, one of its most conceptual battles. Gwendolyn only has a few attacks, and no real close-range ability. Instead, every time...
I know what he's gonna talk about, because the thing about this boss, Dark Sun Gwendolyn, I remember if you struggle with this boss and go for advice on the internet, somebody will inevitably bring up that this hallway is actually real and it has an endpoint, because he keeps teleporting back when you reach him and start beating on him with your sword. And one of the advices that people give for this boss is that you can literally just make him teleport enough times that he will back himself up into a corner that he cannot fucking escape from, and you can just bash his head in.
When you get close, the boss teleports away, giving you time to only get in a few strikes before running again down the endless hallway. After Gwendolyn falls, the hall returns to normal. The end and its ensuing rewards are revealed to be just a few dozen yards away. On first blush, I assumed this hall was more or less like the Mario stairway. After all, that's what the imagery basically implies. You're trapped...
He's gonna talk about just what I said.
...in an endless illusion. Run all you want and you'll never escape. But that's not true. Going out of bounds during the cutscene reveals the normal hallway swapped for this. It's a combination of clever framing and brute force of scale. The original hall is replaced with a Wile E. Coyote-style false ending, which is then shot down the new mile of architecture the game just spawned in. And this isn't just for looks. You can, if you are both stubborn and focused enough, take the boss fight all the way to the end of this passage. You can chase Gwendolyn until both of you are backed up against this brick wall all the way at the end, at which point the boss AI basically breaks. There is a canon ending to this fight, in which you push Gwendolyn's endless hallway until it falls apart, and then you just stand, swinging limply at each other, incredibly far from where you started. This is what's so fascinating about games, and so challenging about this language of real versus fake I've tried to build around it. Because we know it's an illusion. In the game, it's supposed to be a trick, and yet look at it. There it is, hundreds upon hundreds of statues in perfectly ordered rows, as or more real as anything else in the game. Gwendolyn faked the space. Dark Souls did not. The other day,
It's so fucking funny that some of the official advice people give for that boss is literally just run after him till the end of the corridor.
I booted up Fuel. I told my computer to open all the countless miles of road.
Man, he is really obsessed with that fuel again. I mean, it does sound pretty special. So, but yeah, it's a little bit funny.
From 2009, and I just started driving. It is an inherently silly thing to do, burn fake gasoline on the bluffs of a fake desert without so much as a fake objective to give me direction. But as false night passed into false day, passed into false night again, I thought about movie scenes with the special effect of hundreds or thousands of real actors, the illusion of an entire world built temporarily for a single scene, the trick of genuine acrobatics, falls, explosions, captured once to be replayed again and again. As I drove through the artificial walls of a canyon constructed out of digital triangles from actual satellite data, I reflected on our ability to understand something as false and true at the same time, an artistic representation that tirelessly reproduces the space it simultaneously abstracts. There is no aesthetic failing in illusion. The success or failure of a project rests on its emotional communication, no matter the strategies used to achieve it. But still, knowing that when I walk down those stairs in Silent Hill 2, every step really exists before me, sends a wonderful little chill down my spine. Knowing that there are no hollow buildings in Babdi makes the whole tiny city more enthralling. Every game fakes its space in one way or another. But I will always love stepping outside the bounds and marveling at how the trick might be that there's simply no trick at all. Okay, this wasn't an intentional connection for this essay, but I recently gave a talk in a real space for the very first time. Even if this talk is bad, please do not unsubscribe, because last month I was lucky enough to speak to a couple hundred people at the Durham Public Library in a talk I loosely titled A Beginner's Guide to Game Analysis. Am I bragging a little? Sure, but I am also excited to tell you that the full recorded talk is now available on Nebula, both the scripted part of it and the 40+ minutes of Q&A afterwards, featuring super thoughtful and interesting questions from the audience. Nebula sponsored this video, and Nebula has allowed me to do so much cool bonus content this year, from cooking videos to whole additional essays to now, hosting my recording of this live talk. It's a healthier, more sustainable streaming ecosystem that I'm proud to be a part of. It's also, here's the thing you might not know, cheap! Follow my link in the description to get a solid 8 hours of exclusive content from me and countless hours of other creators' exclusive series, movies, classes, and more for just over $2 a month. Doing a talk at a local library was a very specific dream of mine, but the fact that it was, local, left a lot of people out. Now you too can see me walk through how I'd come up with an essay about Elden Ring, make jokes about Animorphs, and answer all sorts of great questions from an audience that you can't see them in the video, but they are actually there, I promise. I wasn't just giving a talk in an empty room. You're gonna have to trust me on this one. Anyway, Nebula. Watch my talk, watch a whole heap of other exclusive videos, support creators like me for just over $2 a month. And then go support your own local library. It's just a good thing to do.
Oh man, I support the fuck out of my local libraries, because libraries in Belgium have a shit ton of video games for consoles you can borrow, and like they have, some of them literally have games that came out just a couple months ago. Like I remember looking through the list of games, and one of the libraries in my area has the new Final Fantasy like remake part 2, which came out like 1 or 2 months ago. And that's crazy that I can just borrow that for like essentially $6 a year. not to mention like all of the other like book-based resources, movies, and man, libraries are fucking awesome. I'm assuming there's not gonna be anything. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Great video by Jacob Geller. Like I said, some of his video, I watched at least one of his videos, but a lot of videos of his have been recommended to me, at least as a like a thumbnail pop-up on the somewhere on the right, you know, because I used to watch and still watch sometimes these long form video essays. Joseph Anderson is one example. Like, he has insane videos. He had like a 3.5 hour video about Witcher 2 that I watched in its entirety. Great stuff. And usually Jacob Geller would pop up in recommended alongside those. So I seen a couple of his videos, like at least got recommended to me. Games that don't fake space, I don't think I saw. And holy shit, what a great surprise, and yeah, just a cool introspection into a really cool topic about you know, the physical space of video games that we play. And yeah, not much to say about this other than I will have to come back to this video and like note down the names of the games he played and mentioned, because those are some cool looking games that I would be interested in. Holy. So yeah, for people watching later on YouTube, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you as always in the next one.